In today's episode, I'm sharing one of my pet peeves with you. We're going to talk all about capitalisation, fonts, and layouts that reduce readability and comprehension.
If you're anything like me, you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into a well-written article, whether it be a fact sheet, a case study, or a simple newsletter article. All your effort can be undermined by how you actually print the words on paper.
Back in the day, I created a printed newsletter for the Queensland nursery and cut flower industry called Ornamentals Update. The aim was to share information relevant to the then expanding ornamentals industry. As an indication of how long ago that was, the first few editions were typed on manual typewriters, and I still remember the excitement of a fancy new electric typewriter arriving in the front office. I was always curious about whether it was better to use all capital letters in headlines or to go with what I thought was more visually appealing, sentence capitalisation, where just the first letter is a capital. I fondly remember long conversations with Alan Ernst, the senior editor of the DPI publications unit back in the 80s. We each had our own preferences and strongly held opinions, but they were merely that, as they were untested. It was only some years later that I stumbled across this lovely booklet, Communicating or Just Making Pretty Shapes. What set it apart was that it was based on empirical research conducted over several years, not just one person's opinions. Colin Wheeldon, the author of this book, conducted his initial research in 1982. There were subsequent editions, and now the latest version, printed as a book, is called Type and Layout. Are you communicating or just making pretty shapes? His first few editions were free, and I'll include a link to a PDF of one of those in the show notes so you can read the results yourself.
This is great background, John, but let's get to some of the interesting results. Firstly, the use of all capitals. As enablers of change, we really want people to be able to understand what we've written. Otherwise, it's a pointless endeavour. Wheeldon's research showed that legibility dropped from 90% for a headline in lowercase to just 57% when presented as all capitals. That's a drop of 33%. So stop thinking you're using all caps to get your message across more effectively. That's akin to a person shouting at someone who doesn't speak their language and thinking that somehow that improves their comprehension of the foreign language. Talking of shouting, we should be aware that our younger generation use all caps in their text messages to signify shouting at someone. So is that how we want to be seen?
If you really wanted to reduce comprehension, another way of doing that is to place shading behind the text. No matter the colour of the shading, it always reduces the readability of the text. Sadly, I've often seen people put a 10% grey shade behind a block of really important text, thinking it makes it stand out and be easier to read. But it has the reverse effect and reduces comprehension. So please don't do this. And what about the age-old dilemma? Which font is better to use for our printed materials, serif or sans serif? Serif typefaces, such as Times New Roman, are those that have the extra flourishes on the letters that makes them look a little bit fancy. Sans serif fonts, such as Arial, don't have those extra flourishes, making them look perhaps cleaner and simpler. An easy way to remember this is that sans means without in French, so sans serif fonts are those without flourishes.
As enablers of change, while we may be interested in how the words look on the page, it's surely more important to have material that is easier for the reader to comprehend. A test article was composed in serif and sans serif typefaces, and Wheeldon had 224 participants read the text and then answer some comprehension questions. The results were stunning. 5 times more readers achieved good comprehension with the serif typeface over the sans serif. So those pretty little flourishes not only look pretty, they actually help increase the comprehension of the text as well.
Some say the opposite is true with headlines, that you should use sans serif text. It turns out it makes little difference. But whatever you do, don't use reversed text, as in white text on a black background, as it has a negative effect on readability. Finally, what colour should we make the text? Perhaps a nice tone of red, blue or green? No. If you want to make it easiest for people to comprehend the text, follow Henry Ford's approach and make it black, black or black. That was repeatedly shown to have the highest readability in Wheeldon's exhaustive tests.
So you've heard our thoughts. Now we'd like to hear yours. Add a comment below this episode and tell us about your experiences with fonts and layout, including any tips or further ideas about it. We don't want this just to be a one-way conversation, so please join in by sharing your thoughts and ideas with us.
Thanks, folks, for joining us on this Enablers of Change episode. Remember to subscribe if you'd like to know when new episodes are available. And if you liked what you've heard, tell a friend. All the best until we meet again.